Welcome to Eric Unscripted. Today we are answering an extremely important question. Is OK Boomer ageist? No, but actually yes, but actually no. Anyways, let's see what these people think of it.
I don't trust the younger generation in terms of values because I don't even think they know what it is that they value.
Wow, we live in a society. That is what every generation has said about every generation that is younger than them. I don't have very high hopes for this group of people.
There's a term swirling nowadays. OK Boomer.
OK Boomer. OK Boomer trend.
It's going viral.
Almost like a demeaning term to older people.
The millennials and Generation Z have the Peter Pan syndrome. They don't ever want to grow up.
This grievance culture, as you suggest, that says that we're all owed something from the world.
OK Boomer.
How long does this go on for?
You love me as much as you love to share memes about minions.
Okay.
My name's Mike Simpfendorfer. I'm 57 years old, from Bellflower, California. I got 4 kids.
My name is
Congratulations.
Walker. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I'm 65 years old.
My name's Jess. I'm 20 and I'm from Ventura, California. My name's
Okay, I always thought that OK Boomer was millennials versus boomers because the first lady that said it was like my age and she's a millennial. I don't even know. Okay, I don't know what age millennials are. How old are millennials? Anyone born between 1981 and 1995. Okay, so I'm like right in the middle of that, kind of. How old are Gen Z? Gen Zs are between 23 and 8? These generational things, there's a really big gap between them. Well, whatever.
Ren. I'm 21 and I'm from East LA.
Hi, my name is Stefan. I'm also 21 and I am a student and an artist.
I'm Bill. I am a writer and a dad of 2, and I'm a baby boomer.
So I really don't think they should have used Gen Z kids. I think they should have used young millennials because I hate to sound like a boomer, but these kids, they're in school. They need a little bit more experience than that. I'm sure that many of them are independent in a sense, but I remember being in college and the things that I thought were going to be problems and responsibilities then compared to now really don't stack up. And I think it's given me a more realistic outlook on life. I don't know, maybe that's just me being a boomer, but I think they should have picked people closer to my age.
To line up over on the left, I'm a Gen Z over on the right.
OK Boomer is ageist.
So I think the answer is yes, but I don't think it's derogatory. You're allowed to make fun of people. You can't make fun of people in a nice way. It's just literally impossible, right? Now, does that mean that you're being maleficent? No, it doesn't have to mean that. You hear all this stuff about you can't make fun of anybody anymore and comedy is gonna die and this and that, and I feel like there's a little bit of truth in that. I just think that people on the left are blowing things way out of proportion. But this OK Boomer stuff is weird because it's really the political right that is now, pointing the finger and saying, how dare you? So the roles have kind of been flipped in a weird sort of way. Oh, that is really surprising.
Ageist because the term in itself erases the entire experience of a whole generation. If we as Gen Zers were to get that same energy from boomers, we would feel ostracized and we would
But
feel
it's a joke.
marginalized.
I've never heard the term OK Boomer.
What? Why is that guy even here? How do they select people for this? There have to be more than 3 people on each side that want to participate in this. How did they not grab somebody that had a strong opinion on it? This guy's never even heard of the term.
I feel like it's like dismissing something that someone says.
Yes.
And implying to someone who's a baby boomer. Like if someone were to say, oh, I don't like Starbucks, you'd be like, OK Boomer.
Oh, that's funny to me rather than...
I personally don't think it's necessary.
It's kind of like the whole back in my day type language, and our response to back in my day is OK Boomer.
Well, we
That's a decent explanation.
Yes.
Well, we all have to, so I wouldn't say something insulting about my kids' generation because they're all Gen Z. So.
Well, Bill, a lot of boomers would. They should have got some more crotchety people. It would just be way more entertaining.
Create problems that younger generations have to solve.
That has always been true for the entire history of history. I will say that you hear quite a lot of this, especially when it comes to the environment, but I don't actually think that people consciously are setting out to screw over the next generation by creating huge problems that are then going to be their problems. I think everybody acts in their own best interests, and it's hard to understand what the consequences of something are going to be until it's too late. And hindsight is always 20/20.
No, I would agree. And I do think that's sort of true of every generation. You have to deal with the world that your parents gave you.
They're not really answering this question at all.
They have created those problems. I don't think they did it on purpose. Hindsight is 20/20.
There you go.
So once you...
These kids are turning out to be more wise than I thought. Shame on me. But also, I don't know. I just assumed they would grab a group of people that would be fairly polarized. And these people are all really reasonable. Come on, Jubilee. That's not entertainment.
See the effects of what you've done. I don't necessarily think it's just the younger generations cleaning up the problems.
I think historically there are issues that are inherent in each generation.
It's always going to be this way. My parents left problems for us to solve. We're going to leave problems for you to solve. I think it comes down to what do we do about it? Because it takes a lot of leadership to go, I don't think what I've been doing or been a part of has been very helpful.
Yeah, political leaders are never going to admit to their mistakes. Well, some do, like Tulsi Gabbard, and then these people are always just flamed out of contention in politics. It's really disgusting. This is, personally, I think we should have term limits for governors and senators, because you look at the average age. What is the average age of a congressperson? I think it's like in the 60s. The average age of members of the House was 57.8 years. Okay, so the average age of somebody in the Senate is almost 62 years old. That's just a guarantee that we will lag severely behind in solving our problems and developing solutions. The United States is historically a laggard when it comes to producing real political change. Or at least we have been in the last several decades. I think we really need term limits. And I don't mean that in a sense that younger people are more progressive, and I think there should be more Democrats in the Senate and the House. I think you need close to a 50-50 spread. I lean towards the political left, but I recognize that if one position has all the power, then you get corruption. You don't ever hear a disseminating opinion, so your positions are never challenged. Nobody is ever 100% correct. The Democrats aren't right about everything, and the Republicans aren't right about everything. We need each other.
I trust the values of the other generation.
Well, we already know what the older lady thinks of this. So, what is the definition of, an ism, like racism or ageism? Well, it's when you judge the individual based on the group. So I take people by, or at least I do the best I can to judge people on a case-by-case basis. I've said this in a different video, but I view that every generation of Americans has been smarter, more creative, less racist, more tolerant, more inclusive, et cetera, than the generation that came before them. The generation after me, that will be the case, and so will the generation after them. But that doesn't mean that I can't trust the values of the generation that my parents are in. On average, I think that our political views are better. They're healthier for society. You can look up Pew Research on like attitudes towards interracial marriage or gay marriage, and you can see that generation after generation, we become more accepting of these things. But I just don't think it's fair to say that you don't trust the values of another generation.
I cannot say that.
Ooh, the young people.
I do, just as much as I may question some of the values that they're talking about. One of the things that personally bothers me is we've allowed communism to become an acceptable thought process in this country to go.
Oh my God. So now we're getting to the juicy stuff, right? Is socializing medicine communism? No, it's not. And I don't know specifically what he means. But this has been really infuriating because ever since Bernie Sanders got really popular in like 2015, everybody strawmanned his position and called it communism and socialism or whatever. And for years, the people defending Bernie Sanders' ideas of socialized medicine said, no, this isn't communism. This isn't socialism. We can do what the Nordic countries like Norway, Finland, and Sweden do. The NHS in the UK, the National Health Services, or Canada, that's not socialism. And so this argument was made for years repeatedly, and nobody would listen to it. And now, today, what you hear the political right say, now they just focus on Venezuela. They openly admit that the Nordic countries, they're not socialist, they just have a different program. Whereas the whole time, the kind of program Bernie was talking about was that type of program. But back then, it was communism and socialism. Now they're saying it's not communism or socialism. It's so stupid.
They grew up in a different world than we did.
Yes.
When I got out of college, I got a job, I got an apartment, I was able to live by myself, and you could do that then. The world that our children are coming into, it's not nearly
and that's the boomers' fault.
Price of housing because of the sort of wages they can get. There aren't companies that you can go enter now at 21 or 2 and know that you're going to work for 40 years for that company.
I knew what my beliefs and my values were going to be because my mother passed down the same ones that my grandmother had. I passed down the same ones to my son. Now, I think somewhere in between.
So I'm going to pause there. I don't like that idea, right? And for the reasons I just listed, every generation has been better than the generation that came before it. So this woman's fairly old. Her grandmother would have lived in a time, definitely in a time of segregation. Now, obviously, she's African American, right? So I really doubt that her grandma approved of segregation. But if that's your argument, then you need to expand that argument to everybody. Otherwise, it's not really a valid or fair argument. So then I would say, well, would you be okay with, a white segregationist passing on those values to their kids and then their kids and then their kids, and now somebody living in 2020 is in favor of segregation? So no, that doesn't work. And the way we evolve our political attitudes, it just happens naturally, right? People who live in a big city, they just naturally are more egalitarian. They view other people as equals, right? Whereas people that live like in a rural community, well, they have more racist and sexist and homophobic attitudes on average because they just don't get much of an experience with other kinds of people. So you don't even need to force the progression and betterment of ideas and political attitudes and the way we view each other. They really just happen naturally. But what this woman is talking about is, to me, it's the suppression of the natural progress towards better political attitudes and whatnot.
Generations between you all and us, Things have changed. We've stopped talking. We've stopped saying what we value. I don't trust the younger generation in terms of values because I don't even think they know what it is that they value. Do you value another person's life? I tell my son, oh my God.
Yes? What is she talking about?
One of the worst things can happen to me is someone in this generation would have to take care of me. They don't understand me. They don't know anything about me.
That goes to...
I really don't know I don't know what she means. Like, is she talking if she had to be put in a care facility, she doesn't think that a younger person would be able to take care of her because they wouldn't care because younger people don't care about anything except their cell phones or something? That just doesn't make any sense to me. I will say, though, that in this country, and this has been true for a really long time, the way we treat older people, I think it's just really awful. In a lot of countries, when grandparents are retired and when they can't support themselves physically or financially anymore, they move in with their children or maybe their grandchildren. Living the latter years of your life that way, there's so much more dignity and freedom. And I kind of hate to put it this way, but your children and grandchildren kind of owe you something in a sense. They changed your diapers for years and they put up with your crap for years. So we should be putting up with their crap.
That goes to the prompt, which is, do you trust the other side's values? And I think of the values that you may have grown up with in terms of what you were taught about being homosexual and whatnot. I grew up queer in a Black family. That's a whole different dynamic. And what they were taught that was brought down to them intergenerationally, it has been homophobia.
I'm not really...
See, that's the problem with this Jubilee stuff. And maybe nobody did address it, but they typically cut off the conversation when it starts to get interesting.
Sure what the values of baby boomers are, what they would agree on are, but I do appreciate all the work that has been done for us by that generation, civil rights, women's rights, LGBT rights. I was born with all those rights, but it was really the people that were
also a very good point
in those protests that got us where we are today.
I was a young gay boy and couldn't even say the word until I was in my 20s. It was the most horrible thing you could imagine growing up to be. I couldn't talk to anybody about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gay and...
So there's at least 3 gay people on this panel, which is really interesting. So maybe that's why some of the older people, their opinions have been so reasonable because they understand a little bit better.
There's so much progress that has been made, but there's still so much to be made. When I think of values of baby boomers, the first thing that I think of is kind of just the whole hard work gets you pretty much anywhere mindset, and I just feel like that's so toxic.
Kind of agree.
There's so many other barriers that a lot of people don't talk about, if you're poor, if you have kids, if you don't have opportunities for education, those 3 just alone will inhibit your success.
I believe my generation will leave the world a better place.
Yes, because every generation has done that.
I hope you do.
Me too.
I plan on fighting to do our part. That when I part, that you've inherited things that have improved. And then I hope when you leave the earth, you've made it even better. And Henny, because if we don't, game over. And that may be a dramatic term, but I tell people, my age, we don't have a choice. Do we leave it better or worse? It's an obligation.
And I think this generation will leave making a better place because of everybody else's work.
Knowing what I know about history, a lot of what we're experiencing today are just new renditions of what we've already experienced. And we know that history repeats itself. We just don't know when to call it.
But what is she talking about? Is she talking about the Fourth Reich is coming? Because it's not. Is she talking about we're going to go backwards on the civil rights laws that were passed in the 60s? Because we're not. So I don't know what she's talking about. There very soon could be a economic collapse that was much worse than the Great Depression, but that wouldn't mean that we would lose rights. I guess it could depend on what she's meaning by better.
oftentimes when we call it, it's too late. Knowing what I know about the environment and what's really going to happen, it's like I can't realistically say that one, I in good conscience would want to like bring a new generation into this world, and knowing that it will be a better world for them.
We can't say
that kind of environmentalist attitude I don't really agree with very much. I do agree that there are things happening in the environment that are just like almost criminal in a sense, like what's happening with coral reefs and plastic pollution and things like that. At the same time, I don't think that means that the world or the environment is necessarily going to be worse far off in the future. That would take a very long time to explain, though.
the world. We can only say, guess what? We were here, we made a change, we attempted to do good, and we attempted to help others and become more diverse. And if we did that, you know what? We did something. Collectively, individually, we made the world a better place.
So that was really nice to hear. Although earlier when she said that I got my values from my mom, who got them from her grandma, from her great grandma or whatever, that was a little bit counter to this concluding statement. And maybe she didn't really mean it as much as she said it. People tend to, they'll give you their big opinion on something and they're able to formulate it into words, but they don't actually consider what those words mean because they haven't really thought of it before. And then it's really easy to nitpick what they said. So my overall conclusion, the question was, is OK Boomer ageist? And they really barely addressed that here. And I gave my answer, yes, but it's a joke. You don't have to take it too seriously. Now, there are people that look at the boomer generation with quite a lot of animosity, right? Like Greta Thunberg and quite a few others, for example. And then there are people that are in the boomer generation, and there are people not much older than me. Like I'll go on like right-wing alternative news media and just see what they're saying, like on Daily Wire or whatever. And you got people talking about how if we accept gay marriage, then that's going to mean the end of civilization. Or if I've actually heard a guy say, if we allow this transgenderism trend to continue where we can just say a man is a woman and a woman is a man or whatever, he literally said, then that means the end of civilization. Because if you can't even define those things, then what does anything mean? And that is so stupid and ridiculous. It would have been not just entertaining, but it would have been interesting and I think valuable to see people who are more polarized than this group of people was talking about these issues. But at the same time, it's very nice to see the not so ugly side of this, because media like this is sensationalized to get a lot of clicks, and this video doesn't quite have 1 million views on it, and maybe if there would have been some big fight or something, it would have been way more popular. I think it's actually a little bit more responsible to tell the story from the position that most people come from, because this polarization makes people think that things are worse than they actually are. So overall, pretty good job here with this. So those are my opinions on all of this. Maybe I'll look back at this and think I was wrong about one thing or the other. I'm kind of just ad-libbing, and I didn't watch this. This is the first time I've watched this video, so I'm just reacting to it. Feel free to let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.